This is an emergency Canadian service announcement. Butter. My country, Canada, has been in the news a lot these past few months. I know that Canada doesn't ever really want to be in the news all that much unless it's for something sweet. Usually that centers around doing something awesome in sports. That's really good stuff, but the news these days, not so much. Not really a fan of all these headlines. So, I'm a very proud Canadian. I haven't really lived in Canada since 2018, but there was a brief stint during the pandemic, but yeah, I miss it very much. And reading all of this news makes me miss it even more. I have this show and this channel, and people from all over the world are watching me, and then they hear how I speak, and then they can pinpoint and point out and make fun of my Canadian accent, which I didn't even know I had until the YouTube comments told me I had one. And well, now I just embrace it. I love it. It makes me even more proud to be Canadian. So when something or some place that you love is getting bullied, it affects you, right? You want to help in any way that you can. You want to stand up and play your part and protect what it is that you love and what it is that you are and who I am, and you just want to do something. And I'm not going to be solving any trade wars over here, I don't think, but I can make a very involved cooking video dedicated to making a beloved Canadian dessert, pastry, treat, whatever. Kind of known outside of Canada in some places and on the internet and whatever. I still consider it a very well-kept secret. It is called the Great Canadian Tariff Tart. Just made that up. The butter tart. Always been my favorite since day one, whether it's from like a bakery or a farmer's market or off the assembly line into a supermarket. It doesn't matter. And I come from Ontario, which is a province in Canada, and it's rumored that the butter tart is from that province. Furthermore, my parents live in the damn butter tart capital of the world, where they host a festival called the World's Best Butter Tart Festival. I don't know what it's called, but it's there and it exists. Anyway, I put the call out on Instagram to my fellow Canadians. Send me the best Canadian butter tart recipes. Send them all, and I got a whole bunch of them. And I don't know if these ones are the best, but I'm gonna pick 4 and I'm gonna make them. Whew. This one's for Canada. So what we're gonna be doing here is making the pastry dough recipe. And it's gonna be a blanket pastry dough recipe to cover all 4 of these different types of butter tarts. We're focused on the filling of the butter tart. We just need a pastry to go along with it, because some of the recipes I'm following just say you need a pastry. Buttery, flaky, crispy, that's what we need, and we need it right now. Bowl me. Thank you so much. 1.5 cups, 180 grams of all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Whisk it up. 1/4 cup of chilled cubed butter, and 1/4 cup of chilled vegetable shortening. So I got my favorite thing in the world, which is a pastry cutter, pastry blender. Mix this all together, cut it together until it's very fine crumbs. And if you stopped with the mess, and I cannot express how much adoration I have for this thing right here. So in a 1 cup measuring cup goes 1 egg yolk. Egg yolk was just kind of hanging out for a bit too long, and it got it developed a skin around it. But it's okay, there it is. 1 tablespoon of lemon juice in with the egg yolk. And now I have some ice water where the ice has melted, but it is very cold, and I need to add enough water to come up to 1/3 cup. Stirring briskly with a fork, mix the liquid in with the flour mix till the pastry starts holding together, and if it doesn't, it's too dry, you add a little more water, but I think we're good in that department. And then press it into a disc shape. Honestly, that was the easiest pastry I've ever made. check that out, you hosers. Now this is only enough dough for just one of the butter tart recipes. I am making 4 in total. So I need 3 more identical to that. Brilliant. Now this has to chill and firm up. Probably gonna take a couple hours, so start the timer. What are you wearing today, Jamie? It's a Holtzkern. What? So Holtzkern is sponsoring today's video. They are an Austrian family-run watch and jewelry business for both men and women, made from natural materials like what I'm sporting today, which is called the Novalis watch, made with a blue marble dial, and the band is wood. Their products are manufactured in small quantities, ensuring production is responsible and ethical, and that just adds to the uniqueness. Feels like I'm the only one around town that has anything like it. It's very light, but it feels high quality. Although this one is wood, they have an overwhelming selection of styles to choose from, and jewelry too. Bracelets, necklaces, rings. All of their products are protected with a 2-year guarantee, and everything is shipped from Vienna, Austria. Free worldwide shipping and arriving to you in around 2 to 5 business days with custom fees on them. If you're interested in Holtzkern, click the link in the description or the comment section. Use my code antichef, get 15% off your purchase on their entire website for a limited time only. Thank you, Holtzkern. Thank you. Time for a little narration because I was trying to talk to the camera and I was screwing up what I was doing. So no, I need to focus. So on my floured surface here, I'm gonna roll out the dough until it's 1/8 of an inch thick. For the Canucks, that's 3.18 millimeters. So I need to cut out some 4-inch circles. I was gonna use this cookie cutter, but I found out it's not big enough. So instead, how about this deli lid? Trace around, cut out my circles, add those into the cups in my floured muffin tin. And I just keep re-rolling and reusing the dough until I have enough circles for what I'm looking for here, and then into the fridge to chill. All right, just make sure you're in the mood for a butter tart bonanza. I'm just trying to hype myself up because I got a lot to do. And I want to get it, okay, just get it done. So I'm going to start things off with this butter tart bonanza. I'm going with that, with what is known to be the first ever written recipe of a butter tart from the year 1900 from a town called Barrie, Ontario, which is a mere 2-hour drive from where I grew up. It's also just a 1-hour drive from the metropolis, Toronto. Okay, so this recipe was sent to me from a Jamie Levy. And that's an incredible first name. It's one of the best. I think it's one of my favorites. I work at the Simcoe County Archives just north of Barrie, Ontario. We have the original butter tart recipe in our collection. It was written in a cookbook for the Royal Victoria Hospital in Barrie at the beginning of the 20th century. What I noticed right off the bat is how few ingredients we are using for this one. It's just this right here, and this is the only recipe today, and in fact, the only butter tart recipe I've ever found that uses white sugar. Actually, it's not 100% sure what it is using because the cookbook recipe is very vague. It just says a filling for tarts, 1 cup of sugar. But the consensus online from my very weak research was 1 cup of white sugar, not brown sugar. Capiche? All the other, I just broke the egg, so we gotta continue. All the other recipes today will be using brown sugar. Bring over this thing. So all it says to do with this recipe is mix. So let's mix. Butter. The butter is already soft, so I feel comfortable adding in the next ingredient, which is the sugar, 1 cup of white sugar. Let's mix that in first. So for a recipe from the 1900s, check out this futuristic gadget I'm using. I'm going to cream this together first before I add anything else. Okay, I'm liking the look of that creaming. So I'm gonna break in 2 eggs, and we continue our mix. Slow it down. Did I mention that was half a cup of butter? And then 1 cup of sugar, that's 2 eggs, and now I just mix. Okay, I'm happy with the mix on that mix. Now, when you're making a butter tart, there's a few different avenues you can go. Raisins, currants, those can be added into something like this. Chopped nuts, such as walnuts or pecans/pecans, however you call them, don't care. Or you could just eat it plain, and plain would be just like something like that. That's usually my preference. I am following what is known to be the oldest butter tart recipe, and I want to follow this one precisely. So I'm gonna add in 1 cup of currants, which seems excessive. This recipe was written by a Mrs. Malcolm McLeod. Her first name was Mary. So I guess Mary really likes currants, which is fine, personal preference. And I'm gonna go with it here. I'm gonna mix this together now. So you retrieve your muffin pan with the shells from the fridge. And this is the first bonehead move of the day for me. Well, the one that you know of. I was trying to get ahead here and I loaded up the muffin pan with all of my shells. The thing is that half of these are gonna be for another recipe. So yeah, you know what I gotta do here? This is not something that I would advise you to do, but because I am a bit of a tool. Now the reason for me doing that is because each butter tart recipe has a different oven temperature and baking time, and I want to follow each one of those. While we're in the removing the dough business here, I figured that since I have a little PTSD from my last video where I got the bread stuck to the bread pan, I added butter to the loaf pan. I 100% did. I don't want anything like that to happen today, so I am going to now, after the fact, grease up my little cups here. Fill the cup up with around 3/4 of filling. So the recipe says to fill the tarts and bake. So whatever that means, you're on your own, kid. Enter my favorite cooking YouTuber. He's not here. And he doesn't know who I am. Glenn and Friends Cooking. It is my favorite food channel. He is a fellow Canadian who follows along to old recipes and Canadian recipes, dives into the history of Canadian recipes and Canadian food, and he makes a lot of butter tarts. And he has made this recipe. So when something says fill the tarts and bake, I watch his video and he says, well, it's 400 degrees Fahrenheit for around 12 to 15 minutes. So when he says that, I listen. Okay, ended up going around 15, 16 minutes because the filling didn't look ready. Now to me, this just looks a little different than most butter tarts that I'm used to because it doesn't have that intense brown filling that most other tarts I have has. The filling hasn't properly set, so I'm just gonna give them like 10, 15, 16, 17. Hello, bonjour. Now the next recipe, I was just melting some butter. The next recipe was sent to me from a Charlene. I like the one from Robin Hood Flour, and then she sent me the link. Now Robin Hood Flour is a Canadian flour brand, and the website, robinhood.ca, because it's a Canadian website, yeah, it seems fairly butter tarty-in. So we start this off with 2 eggs, and there's the brown sugar, half a cup of it. You gotta whisk. Common ingredient in butter tarts is corn syrup. It doesn't specify what type, either light or dark. Now I opted for the dark because the light that I had in my pantry had vanilla in it, and I'm gonna be adding vanilla separately, so I didn't want that to pollute it. So add the dark corn syrup, this is 1 cup worth. 1/4 cup of melted butter. The nutrients you get in this thing is just, it's really, really not good for your body. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Immediately once you stir that, it looks like a butter tart filling. That's the color right there. Look at that, a brown goldish ember. Equal amounts of chopped walnuts and raisins, not currants. Just give that a mix. Your tart shells, they just go into the bottom, just like so. An equal amount, too many raisins in that one. Too many walnuts in that one. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna call it there. I like plain butter tarts too, so I'm gonna leave those 3 plain. Good thing I mixed that all together. I will save this for my breakfast. I'd say around 1/4 cup of filling into each shell. I mean, I was just kind of eyeballing it because you can just pour this in. It's much runnier than the other filling that I was working with. I do hope everyone is okay. Of course, always, forever, we all do, right? I have a feeling there's too much filling in that one and too little in that. So the oven's set to 375 degrees Fahrenheit for this one, 20 to 25 minutes. Good luck. You know what? I forgot to add salt into the mixture, just a little bit. So to make up for it, here's a little pinch of salt onto each top. We are halfway through this butter tart bonanza. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of an update because, you know, is there anything that we can learn and carry with us for the next two recipes? Well, yes. First of all, I had to bake both of these recipes a little longer than I originally said because the pastry crust is a little thicker than originally planned. Second of all, it was a little challenging to get these out of the muffin tins. I had to use the offset spatula and a lot of focus, but we figured it out. There are a couple casualties though, so I salute those two over there. Besides that, let's just keep going. Okay, so the next one we got is a recipe from 1945 from the Purity Cookbook. And Purity was a flour milling company, the largest in Canada. I don't think it's around anymore. I don't think it closed in February 1981. So yeah, some time has passed. We gotta beat 2 eggs until the whites and the yolks are well blended. So 2 cups of sugar, brown sugar. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. This is 2 tablespoons of vinegar. That's a new ingredient for today, but that's gonna cut the sweetness a little bit. Beat that together. And then stir in the melted butter. Or just mix it in. Mix in the melted butter. That was half a cup of butter. I keep forgetting to tell you how much I'm using. I want to split this filling in half because I do want some of these butter tarts not to have this next part, which is the fruit. Either currants, chopped raisins, dates, figs, or nutmegs. Nut meats. Something like a pecan sort of thing. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to stick to currants because that is what we were using in the 1900 recipe, and I think this one would be a nice one to compare with that. So I only need 2/3 cup worth of currants. Fill the shell with 1/2 to 2/3. Okay, stop talking. Fill half, just add half of the filling. Half of these shells are without currants, and then half of them are with. Okay, so the oven is hot, 450 degrees Fahrenheit. I gotta bake this for 10 minutes to start. Then I'm gonna turn the oven down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake it for another 20 to 25 minutes until the filling is firm. Those are looking a little toasty. I think I'm gonna take them out now, 5 minutes before the buzzer. Everything looks great, except for that one. This hair has been stuck up like that the entire video. I'm gonna go fix it. Honestly, that cannot be saved. The curls are running wild right now. Aha! Okay. The toque goes on. Better. Now we're on recipe 4 of 4. This is the final one of the day. And when I asked my fellow Canadians to send me the best butter tart recipe, this is the one I received the most of. It's from Canadian Living, which is, well, when I was growing up, it was called Canadian Living Magazine. I don't know if that exists anymore, if it's just a website, not a physical thing. I don't know. Anyway, my mom had a subscription to this thing, this magazine, and you know, we had copies of it all over the house, in the living room, on the table in front of the TV, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. Yes, people used to keep magazines in the bathroom. The real ones, no. Actually, you know what? I've checked the age demographics of my videos. Most of you had magazines in the bathroom. I know. It's like one of those lifestyle magazines with home decorating and recipes, and you know, my mom used it as a cooking Bible growing up, and you know, we come home after school asking like, Mom, what's for dinner? She'd say something from Canadian Living, and I would go, for the love of God, not again. Can we just have a hamburger or some macaroni or pizza? I don't want all this experimental stuff. And it wasn't very experimental. It was just home-cooked food, and I was a little brat. Yeah, you know, I love you, Mom. You did a great job. That all being said, I've never had the Canadian Living butter tart before. It is described as the best butter tart, so let's make it and see what it's worth. So the great thing about butter tarts is they're very easy to make, because if they weren't, I would be just exhausted right now. Half a cup of packed brown sugar. It's a half a cup of the dark corn syrup again. Now, a lot of people out there might be wondering, like, why don't you just use maple syrup? Jamie, you're Canadian. And I think you can add maple syrup into butter tarts, but that would be more of a maple butter tart. This is different. 1 egg, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of softened butter, pinch of salt, and a teaspoon of vinegar. The vinegar, again, that's the second time today. Okay, so in terms of the fruit, it's either currants, raisins, chopped pecans/pecans, still don't care how you say it however you want, and shredded coconut. Now, shredded coconut, I'm not gonna add because that is just a faux pas in my opinion. I don't want coconut in my butter tarts. That's just a personal thing. Into 1 shell, I'll add some currants. Into 2 other shells, some chopped pecans. Since I bought actual raisins too, a couple of raisins into 1 of the shells, and then 2 of these have nothing. 3/4 of the way up. The bake time has me asking some questions here because the recipe that just came before it was 450 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes, and then I turned the oven down to 350 and I bake. The recipe said 20 to 25 minutes. I ended up doing 15 minutes. This recipe says 450 degrees for 12 minutes only on the bottom third part of the oven. So that's interesting. So I'm gonna listen to what Canadian Living says here, but if I have to call an audible, I will let you know. Bottom third of the oven. Honestly, I feel like that could use a couple more minutes. So let me just put it up to the upper echelon and keep it in there for like another 3 minutes at like 375. Yeah, those look incredible. It's the next day. Order up! Let's start right at the beginning here. The first published butter tart recipe from 1900, the Royal Victoria Hospital Cookbook. It's really up to your personal preference how gooey or firm the filling should be. I really don't have a preference. That recipe has not aged a day. It's something very special about it. It's the white sugar. It has a unique quality to it. You might think that that is too many currants in there, but I don't think it was. It really worked. That is a very good butter tart. It's a very good butter tart. Next up, let's go with Robin Hood flour butter tart. It looks like something you would buy from the grocery store, like an assembly line butter tart. I think pastry-wise and filling-wise, it may be just a tad underbaked, which is strange because I kept it in the oven longer than the recipe said. So I made 2 different versions of it, one without the nuts, one with nuts. So it has nuts and raisins. Okay, it tastes like a store-bought butter tart. The filling is very corn syrup and vanilla heavy. Because the filling tastes like that and because it is kind of just very gloopy, I think because of all of that, I prefer the nut and raisin version of that tart because it just adds a little texture in there. It is a decent butter tart, but I'm not blown away by it. Next up is the Victoria Cookbook recipe from 1945. What is that? It's got like almost like a tanginess to it, but the ingredients wouldn't explain that. I'm gonna be honest here. I've never had a butter tart that tastes like choked on a currant. Yeah, I've never had a butter tart that tastes like that. It has a unique flavor to it and a unique texture to it. It's got a subtle like kind of crunch when you take a bite from the caramelization on the top, which I liked, but the interior is like kind of like almost like a custardy souffle. It's got like a texture of pumpkin pie filling in there. It's very interesting. Look at that. That kind of looks like pumpkin pie. Because of the filling there, it does have like a lighter texture to it than the other ones I feel. I may say there is a little too many currants in the currant version, little mini raisins. It's a good butter tart, but it has a very unique kind of, it's a good butter tart. It's got a unique vibe to it. So lastly is good old Canadian Living butter tart. Visually, this is what I like. It's got a very distinct caramelization on the top and all over the tart really. Got really nice color, so that bake time that I did with this one, I think that was ideal. Now with that filling texture, it's got a gooiness to it, but it's not spilling out of the tart, and I like it. That's it, that's the one. There's something about that one that is just perfection to me. I think the ingredient proportions here are perfect. Perfect. Half a cup of corn syrup. You compare that to the Robin Hood one, which was 1 cup. I think that's a big difference. This one has only a teaspoon of vanilla, 1 teaspoon of vinegar. So it's cutting through some of that sweetness, I think. I keep saying that, but I have to believe it too. It's sweet, the sugar's caramelized, it's buttery, flaky pastry. Any version of the Canadian Living one, whether it was with the nuts, with the raisins, the currants, or just plain, 10 out of 10. I'd even say 11, and I'm being very conservative. The results are in. The results, first of all, with my body, I have a bit of a stomach ache and a sugar rush, which makes sense because I consumed way too many of these things far too quickly. Second of all, third of all, let me show you the order which I enjoyed these butter tarts. Fourth is the Robin Hood flour recipe. Third is the Purity Cookbook recipe from 1945. Second place, the Royal Victoria Hospital Cookbook from 1900, the first written butter tart recipe, and I'm surprised I enjoyed this one as much as I did. And the clear winner here, and my mom is going to be thrilled, the Canadian Living recipe. That truly was the best of the best today, and this is a keeper of a recipe. Everything I love about a butter tart is in this recipe right here. I cannot recommend this one enough. This is Canadian gold. I hope you learned a little something here today. I hope you give the butter tart a try. And if you do, I recommend the Canadian Living one. Here's a beautiful looking butter tart right here. I'm thinking this. Package this up, deliver it to the White House, give it to the guy. Tariff tart pour vous. That's gonna solve a lot of things. That might solve a lot of problems. Anyway, this was Jamie, and that's my cue. Bon appetit. Au revoir.